Sure. I appreciate Representative Pyle, Chairman Pyle, and Chairman Deasy for having this hearing, and for all those who are going to enter into this discussion, which I very much like to continue to have as we take a look at flexible pricing, which, as you know, we granted the LCB in Act 39 of 2016. And as I look at this, I see that what we have are certainly increased revenues to LCB, which we've talked about and touted. But I also see a potential for what we actually have in practice is forcing lower acquisition costs on our vendors, those who do business here in Pennsylvania, and increasing prices for our consumers. And while that certainly will lead for revenue, I am concerned about the overall effects that will have on the market here in Pennsylvania, and how we're going to look at this into the future, which I think is an important distinction that we as public policymakers, all of our jobs are temporary. For some of us, I'm sure people wish it would be more temporary than maybe others. I understand that. But as we look at that, we have to think of, in the future, is this a tool that is truly going to benefit our consumers and those who want to do business in Pennsylvania, or is it a potential tool that would discourage business in Pennsylvania and could possibly harm our consumers? Some of the questions that have arisen since the previous hearing we had on this legislation is the methodology that we're using to set these prices. Is this putting some products at a competitive disadvantage than others? Exactly how much of the additional revenue that we're gaining is because of market, or is it truly because of flexible pricing? And I think a recent letter that we received last month from an international trade group questioning whether this was violative of international trade law is something that we also want to take a look at, and again, continue to have this discussion about where we are now, where we want to see this in the future, and that's why I appreciate the hearing as we look at this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Topper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Holden, for your remarks, and for all of you who have gathered here once again to continue in this discussion. One thing, Mr. Chairman, in your remarks, about 3/4 of the way through, you had talked about passing along some savings to the consumers based on flexible pricing. But I also heard maximizing revenue is a goal with flexible pricing. Ultimately, the revenue that we get is from the consumer. So I'm trying to reconcile those two statements, where we're maximizing our revenue from the consumer while passing on our savings to them. Could you help me understand that a bit?
I think what I referenced was any special programs that the producers present to us, we pass on all of that to the consumers. As far as our FOB negotiations, we don't transfer all of that onto the consumer. Dale could address it further, how we negotiate with the suppliers and how much.
Representative, we work with the suppliers on both the cost side and the retail side. Sometimes we will initiate a discussion, or they will initiate a discussion, and they may want to lower the retail price as compared to their competitors, and we work with them on how to get that done. Sometimes that involves a cost reduction to us, so that the LCB and the state is not hurt in the middle of that, to get that retail price down. And we continually watch, as Chairman Holden said, we continue to watch the prices around us, to all the competitive states on our borders, to know what their selling prices are of each of our products.
And finally, do you feel, and anyone can answer this, that there are, as you heard me mention in my opening remarks, looking into the future, is this a tool, even if we're using it exactly the way it should be used now? Do you feel there are enough checks and balances within this flexible pricing system to ensure that it will always be that way? Or is there a potential to really hurt either our suppliers or consumers, depending on how this tool is handled into the future? And if there is, what would that check and balance be?
Well, obviously, the world changed in 2016, and the PLCB became the controller of the retail price. And that's a whole different world for our friends who are going to testify after this. But as I mentioned in my remarks, we think we are fair. We think it's a give and take. Obviously, there were bumps in the road because we never negotiated before. We think we're past that. Suppliers weren't used to negotiating. But we have a perpetual relationship, and we're at it we're at it every day. Dale's team's doing this every day. So who knows what the future will bring? Whatever the General Assembly and the governor can agree on, we'll implement and execute. But we think this
Well,
is
that's always
working.
something that's very easy for us to accomplish, so that should be fine.
But when you talk about checks and balance, and Dale can speak to this as well, but I'll go over it from a generality standpoint. We have buyers, we have a pricing coordinator, we have a gentleman by the name of Tom Bowman, who, what's his title?
Director of Product Selection.
Director of Product Selection. We have Dale, we have Charlie, and we have the board. All of us review every single price. It's on our board work. We have a board meeting tomorrow. In our board work is all of that, is all of those prices. We have a meeting and we go over any concerns that we have. And every meeting, Dale always gets a question or two, maybe sometimes more, or we'll point out things. We're looking for inconsistencies. We're looking for fairness. We're looking for a variety of things like that. And so it comes up the ladder. But at the end of the day, it's on the board as to making sure that those checks and balances are in place. So I feel pretty good about it personally.
Representative Topper, I'll add that we testified previously that we also are very transparent with our suppliers, that we take every meeting they request. We go to their meetings, we go to their group meetings, their lobbyist meetings. But if a supplier asks to come in and talk to any of us, I assembled the team, and we'll talk to them at length about their products, from all the way down to the FOB, all the way to the retail price, and what their future plans are, and how it fits with ours. And I don't think there's anybody in the industry that will accuse the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board of not granting a meeting and having a good discussion.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We will start with Representative Topper.
Thank you, and thank each one of you for your testimony. Just want to ask Mr. DeGalle to go back to you. You added an addendum to your written testimony about a negotiation that occurred with Marine Spirits. And as somebody who is learning quite a bit about the industry, maybe more than I ever needed or wanted to know, so what prevents someone like Marine from just saying, look, we're not going to offer the product in Pennsylvania anymore? I mean, is the market that strong here that they feel they have to participate in it? I mean, or are we getting to that point? Could you see a point where folks like Marine Spirits says we're not going to do business in Pennsylvania anymore? It's just become too cost prohibitive.
Representative Topper, thank you for the question. Your assumption is pretty close to accurate, which is when Marine Spirits, which is a made-up company, so we don't reveal any member company negotiations, receives notification from Pennsylvania of a price increase. That notification comes in an instant. There's no calendar of when they're allowed to notify. There's no phone call before a notification of increase. So what happens is you have a product on the shelf in Pennsylvania at your retail price. You get an email from one of the people that works at the PLCB with a notification of price increase. Now, generally speaking, depending upon the product, we obviously have room in our margin. So if it was a high dollar value product, we might say to the PLCB, we can take a little off of our case price because it's very important for us to keep our product on the shelf at that specific retail price. That's how this was envisioned to work. What actually happens is we make that offer and they say, thank you very much, congratulations, here's your increased price. That's not negotiating. So then what happens is we want to keep the product on the shelf because it is still selling well in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is a healthy marketplace for our members. But there will be a break-even point where we say, well, we'll sell it other places because there's no longer a value for us to take another hit on our margin in the Commonwealth.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.